Hi guys, it's Dylan from Bijou Diamond Jewellery in London with another watch discussion video, and today we're going to take a look at my top 3 sports watches. I've compiled the list taking into account loads of different factors, thinking about what our clients really enjoy wearing and wearing every day especially, because that's really what a sports watch is about. Something that can be taken to the gym, taken to the beach, swim with, and also be smart to wear at work as well. Most of the watches in the industry now are sports watches, as in the most popular watches. And so it's kind of quite a broad range of watches that we're looking at here, but I've narrowed them down to 3 that I really feel earn that spot and are really important watches in the sports watch part of the industry. So at number 3 we have the Omega Speedmaster, which is an iconic watch in the industry. It's one of my favorite pieces, and the one we're actually going to look at, the very specific model, is the Moonwatch Professional, which comes in 4 variations. The very specific variation that I'm going to look at here is the Hesalite bracelet version, which is kind of the most classic and truest to the original Moonwatch. Omega has sporting interwoven into its DNA, and if we go back in time to 1932, they became the official timekeeper of the Olympic Games, and today, but still in 2018, they still remain the official timekeeper of the Olympic Games. It's not the only sporting event they sponsor as well, and they're extremely involved in sports, and that DNA within the brand and the ethos of the brand extends also out to their watches as well. A lot of their watches are sports oriented or aimed at sports users. And if we skip a few years on from the 30s, when they first became official timekeeper of the Olympic Games, now onto the 50s and late 50s, Omega released a professional line of watches, 3 watches: the Seamaster, the Railmaster and the Speedmaster. And the Speedmaster was a chronograph wristwatch that featured many more increments in between seconds than any other watch in the industry at that time, or wristwatch, which made it really precise for measuring sporting events, so things like motor racing, sprints and things like that, track events. And then we skip another few years on to the 1960s, and that's when NASA picked up this watch, or a variation of this watch, to use on their Apollo 11 mission to the moon, and that's when it gained its name, the Moonwatch. That variation was the 105.102 reference of the Omega Speedmaster Professional, and that watch has barely changed at all since, or between now and then. That's what I really love about this Speedmaster, and what Omega have done with this watch is that they've kept it really true to the original piece. And I think that's really special, that we can now buy a watch that's very true to what actually Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong took up to the moon. So that kind of concludes a little bit of the history on this watch. But if you want to learn more about the timepiece, then I have a full in-depth review of the Speedmaster, where I'll give you all the information on the history and more features on this actual watch. But for me, this is one of the best watches in the industry for wearing every single day. One of my favorite things about this watch is the legibility. It's actually one of the best and most legible watches in the industry. Especially when your eyes get a little bit older, it can be difficult to see what the time is. But this dial features a really nice sort of satin black dial, so it's not too shiny, it's not going to glare, and all the increments are printed white, so it's very easy to see. And obviously the hands are white as well, which makes it extremely legible. You don't have to spend long looking at the watch to work out what time it is or get the right light angle. And obviously Omega designed that so that when the astronauts were in space, they could just have a quick glance at the watch and weren't trying to spend ages working out what time it was. It was obviously designed to be an efficient tool and an efficient sports watch back then. It's one of the greatest everyday pieces in the industry. I think you can pretty much wear it for any occasion. Obviously it's sporty and it has water resistance, so it's good for just everyday wear and swimming with, or wearing the shower, whatever you want to do with it. But and it's quite hardy, it's well built as well. But also it edges slightly more on the smarter end of the sports watch like a lineup, and that makes it much more appropriate for a wider range of uses and occasions as well. There are certain sports watches that Omega makes and other brands make, like the Pro Prof. If you haven't seen that review, go and check that out. That's very much a sports watch, and you can't really wear that with a suit or something smart. It's kind of obviously just designed for sporty events. So the Speedmaster is great because it looks smart, and that black dial, the polished accents on the bracelet and the case, and obviously the black bezel and the chronograph and the layout of the dial is very much more smarter watch, and that makes it brilliant versatile piece. A really great thing about this watch, And also a lot of other Omega watches is that you can buy straps for this watch from Omega, and also other, obviously, third-party straps. But this watch looks really, really cool on the strap. And actually Omega offers 2 variations of this watch anyway on a strap. So it's definitely a nice watch for that reason, that you can take off, or if you buy it with the bracelet, you can take it off the bracelet, put it on a strap, make it look a little bit more sporty or a bit more casual. In some ways, if you put it on the leather, it can look a little bit more smarter as well. So it's an extremely versatile watch in many, many ways. But my main reason for putting it in the top 3 is that I think it's extremely undervalued. And if you buy it from us at Bijou Diamond Jewellery, it's actually less than the retail price as well. So it makes it even more of a bargain. But definitely, this is one of the most undervalued watches in the industry. All our clients that own this watch absolutely love it. They never take it off their wrist and they just totally fall in love with it. And lots of them have really fallen in love as well with the history of the watch, the fact that it is a moon watch. And obviously the fact you can still buy it with a Hesterlite crystal is a really, really cool touch. I thought it was only fair to feature Omega at number 3, or part of this top 3, because they are truly one of the greatest sports watch brands in the industry. So that concludes our Speedmaster at number 3, and at number 2, we have the Rolex Daytona in steel, but I'll kind of expand it out to the whole Daytona range, but really the specific watch I'm talking about is the steel Daytona here. Truly iconic watch. I'm sure that everyone who collects or knows about watches will definitely know about the steel Daytona. It's a pretty iconic piece in the watch industry and has been for many, many, many years. The watch was released back in the 1960s and was named after Daytona in Florida, which is a place that's famous for its motor racing. Again, if you haven't seen my review of the steel Daytona, then go check that out, because that'll give you really in-depth history of the Daytona and different past models as well, and obviously features as well of that watch. So skipping a few years on now to the 1980s and late 80s, we saw the introduction of the reference 16520, which is the similar case to what we're looking at now. It's kind of that was kind of the latest update, or real update to the watch since the beginning of the watch came out. And that was the first time that the watch really changed in design since the beginning. And ever since that release of the 16520, Rolex has had waiting lists for the steel Daytona. And nowadays, this watch can sell used for triple its retail value. So it's an incredibly sought after watch. It's one of the best investment Rolexes you can buy, and therefore that makes it one of the best investment watches you can buy in the whole Swiss watch industry. It's not just a brilliant investment, it's actually one of the best everyday wearing watches. All our clients that own this watch totally have fallen in love with this watch. Again, same as the Speedmaster. They haven't taken it off their wrist. They love the fact that it just is so versatile and can be used for any occasion. In some ways, this watch is slightly more dressy than the Speedmaster, because it has those polished center links and a full polished case. It's also slightly smaller at 40mm, and it wears true to 40mm as well, because it's quite thin. The watch is also slightly more reliable, I'd say, and harder wearing than the Omega Speedmaster. I'd definitely say harder wearing, more stress on harder wearing than reliable. But the watch is built a little bit more solidly than the Speedmaster. You can definitely feel a difference in price when you pick the two up and compare them side to side. The bracelet is much more solid on the Rolex than it is on the Speedmaster, and the clasp is much more solid as well versus the Speedmaster, but both the watches are built to a really high standard, but you can kind of tell the difference a little bit between the two of them. Personally, the older 116520 reference is my favorite one, specifically in the white dial. I think that's a beautiful watch that's very classic looking. I think the white dial really complements that watch a lot. I personally prefer the older reference versus the newer one with the ceramic bezel, because I think the ceramic bezel, or the contrast of that black ceramic bezel, doesn't go with the whole design of the watch quite as well as that steel bezel does. But the ceramic bezel is extremely useful and good for everyday wear, because obviously you're not going to dink it or scratch it like you can on steel. This watch kind of speaks for itself anyway, and you've probably seen me mention it in most of my videos, so I won't go too much in depth. So like I said, if you want to learn more about the history of this watch, then go check out my individual review of this watch. And you can also check out my review of the newer version of the steel Daytona, which is the 116500 LN. Truly iconic sports watch, has been for many, many years, and will be for many, many, many years. This one's not going anywhere, and it's an iconic piece. And for me, that's why it deserves a spot in my top 3 lineup. Now for number 1, we have the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, and specific variation of the Royal Oak we're looking at is the Offshore. The Royal Oak was released back in 1970s, or in the early 1970s, and Audemars Piguet was kind of struggling with sales around that time, and Giorgenta came in and designed the Royal Oak, which was totally new and totally unique for the watch industry at that time. The watch industry hadn't seen a watch that was finished to that level in steel, or a sports watch that was finished to that level. Sports watches before then were kind of seen as, utility watches that you would just wear for sports and that's it. And Giorgenta wanted to change that and offer a watch that had the same level of finishing and perfection that you see on a dress watch, and offer that on a more sporty design. The Royal Oak, when it was released, took the industry by storm. Initially it wasn't so popular, but after people really understood what he'd done and how unique and amazing it was an incredibly popular watch and totally changed the industry, and has done massively since then. Industry's definitely moved more towards sports watches since then. Other massive watches have followed since then that he's also designed, like the Nautilus from Patek Philippe. So it was an incredibly important watch in the watch industry and in watchmaking history. So I thought it was fair to put it at the #1 spot. But the real variation that I'm looking at was the Offshore, which was released in the 1990s. And that was designed by a young guy who wanted to offer a more sporty, an even more sporty version of the Royal Oak. The Offshore featured a bigger, bulkier case at 42mm, but the watch wears much more like a 44mm watch. It featured obviously a chronograph, being a sports function, a big bulky bracelet, and a really, really cool angular chunky design. It featured iron casing inside to prevent magnetic fields, and a few other design changes like a really open, obvious rubber gasket around the bezel. It was really designed to look like a raw version of, bigger sized up, bulkier version of the Royal Oak. The Offshore was an extreme success when it came out and has been ever since. Again, another watch that has totally changed the industry, and also for Audemars Piguet has really boosted sales. Many watches or designs like the Royal Oak Offshore have come out since then, since Audemars Piguet released that. So yeah, it was an important watch. And obviously the Offshore has taken the level of sports and luxurious sports watches to another level. When it came out, there was nothing like that. The watches that Rolex were doing, obviously you could buy them in gold and things like that, but the finishing and the level of quality to the watch was nowhere near what Audemars Piguet was making with the Royal Oak and obviously the Offshore now. The Offshore was a true work of art, and that's why I think it needs this spot at #1. We've got some amazing strap combos and dial combos. Even though it was originally released on a bracelet, majority of the watches now, the Offshores, are actually on a strap. And you can buy them either on the hornback leather, which is like the iconic Offshore look, or the rubber straps. And Audemars Piguet offers lots and lots of different leather straps and rubber strap options for these watches. And so that's what I really like about the watch. There's so many different variations of these pieces. There's some limited editions as well, but there's definitely a dial and a strap combination that will suit you and you'll totally love. And obviously you can change up these straps. You can buy different straps and change them up. The Royal Oak Offshore has probably the best wrist presence of any watch I've ever felt. It's really, really cool on the wrist. It feels amazing. The solid heft of it, the quality, when you feel that watch, it just feels such high quality, far more so than any other sports watch in the industry. It just feels really incredible and solid. You can definitely tell that they've put a lot of thought into the design into this watch, and they've not just thought, let's just make a chunky sports watch tool looking piece. It really is beautifully finished. Can't stress that enough. The Offshore is amazing work of art, and that's why I put it at #1 spot. It's, for me, a complete work of art, not just on the outside, the case finishing and all the tiny finer details, but internally as well. The movement is truly stunning. A lot of brands, when they make a sports watch, they just make a watch that's kind of really functional, like a Rolex. It doesn't have a nice, attractive movement. It's just designed to beat away, and it's not designed to look pretty at all. Whereas Audemars Piguet have taken it to a different level. They've offered us a watch that has incredible craftsmanship, incredible finishing inside and out. And you can definitely tell that a lot of time has been put into creating this master timepiece. If you get a chance to try the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore on in person, then make sure you do it, because it's one of the coolest watches ever. I used to own one, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but this is, for me, and always will be, one of the coolest watches in the industry. Thanks guys for watching. Let us know in the comments what you would change about this lineup. Would you add or change any watches, or do you agree with what I've put down? And as always, if you're interested in any of the watches mentioned in this video, then don't hesitate to contact us. Our details are down in the description. We occasionally have some Audemars Piguets and Omegas in stock, but a lot of the time we do have a lot of Rolexes in stock. And if we don't have the specific model you're after, we can always call that watch in stock for you.